Hello everyone and welcome to BattleTech Faction Briefings. It's my 50th episode, and it happens to coincide exactly when I do my secret summer project, which means I wanted to do something really big and cool this time around, so I decided for July I am focusing on the clans. Insert Bachal jokes here. Today's unit is often commanded by the Khan, or the Sa-Khan, of Clan Ghost Bear. They are called the Golden Bears, and they are the vanguard of the Rosselhog Dominion. Today, we are discussing the Clan Ghost Bear Alpha Galaxy. The Alpha Galaxy insignia is a silver bear head surrounded by golden laurels upon a golden sun. Each cluster and Keshik has their own secondary insignia. The Ursay Keshik would use the Ghost Bear emblem with a silver and gold sunburst behind it. The Silver Root Keshik would use a silver shield with a tree upon it. The first Bear Guards use an angry bear head. The third Bear Guards use a shield with the Ghost Bear emblem and a sunburst behind it. The first Rosselhog Bears used a blue shield in the shape of a bear's head with a white snake placed upon it, and the 50th Striker had a standing bear with an arrowhead behind it. The ceremonial colors of Alpha Galaxy are made up of a charcoal gray and blue-gray camo pattern, with white accents and a black crescent moon outline. The only cluster that does something different are the 8 Cuirassiers, which added black wings onto the sides of their mechs and vehicles after their fighter squadron was destroyed during the Ward of Blake War. This camo style works fairly well on some worlds, though not all, and the elaborate design stands out against many of the more plain house units, which use more basic coloring. The history of Alpha Galaxy is key to the history of the Ghost Bear Dominion. To avoid spoilers, go to the time listed. Alpha Galaxy would be designed as a frontline unit. They would also be the home of the Ursay Keshik, which would be the personal unit of the Ghost Bear Khan, as well as the Silver Root Keshik, commanded by the Sa-Khan. In the early days of the clans, the 3rd Bear Guards would be the honor guard for Ilkhan Nicholas Kerensky and Jerome Wilson when they traveled in Ghost Bear territory. They would be a showcase unit, but still have the skills to fight. The Ghost Bears would be fighting Clan Hell's forces over a mech factory on Tokasha in 2921. The Ursay Keshik would function in a supporting role for the frontline Ghost Bear forces. However, during the fighting at Weisenborn Morass, Khan Kilborn Jorgensen would be killed. The death of their Khan would be enough to enrage the Ghost Bears to push them forward and win the battle. A trial of refusal that preceded Operation Revival would see Clan Ghost Bear fighting Clan Wolf. The fighting would be intense, and Wolf Khan Ulrich Kerensky would be noted as having killed Khan Nornian Seng and Sa-Khan Ursula Jorgensen of Clan Ghost Bear. However, the Crusader clans would win, with Clan Wolf narrowly being defeated. Of note, the 3rd Bear Guards would win challenges from Clan Hell's Horses, Clan Goliath Scorpion, but would lose against Clan Smoke Jaguar. Overall, the Bears did well despite their losses, and won the opportunity to be a frontline unit during the invasion of the Inner Sphere. As Operation Revival began, Clan Ghost Bear would send 3 galaxies, Alpha, Beta, and Delta. They would move through the periphery quickly before heading into the Inner Sphere. When the Ghost Bear forces arrived on Porthos in September 3049, they were surprised to find a lone defender in an archer named Uchi Tikidomo. He would be defeated by Ian Del Villar of the Ursay Keshik. But Uchi's tenacity would be rewarded as he became the liaison of the world as the clan moved forward. In March of 3050, there would be several units attempting to capture Thule, the first world the Ghost Bears attacked in the Inner Sphere. Alpha sent the 50th Striker, Beta sent the 304th Assault Cluster, and Delta sent the 3rd Bear Strikers. They would face the 1st Hussars in the desert, where the Clan Omnimex had trouble with the heat. The Hussars would do hit-and-run strikes to destroy overheated units. A trinary worth of equipment would be destroyed in this battle. The teams would break their bids and bring in reinforcements, including the Omni Fighters of the 50th Striker. A plan was set up to strike at night. The Hussars used artillery and airstrikes to break apart the Bear battle lines. Eventually, a Ghost Bear airstrike would take out the artillery. The Ghost Bears moved forward, and the Hussars took cargo ships to escape the clan onslaught. The clanners chose not to sink the ships, as it would be dishonorable to attack defenseless opponents. The Hussars would escape into the wilderness, and the battle was over. A garrison force was left to deal with the remains of the Hussars, and the rest of the units would continue their conquest of the Inner Sphere. The Ghost Bears attacked Jarrett in May 3050. The forces would be led by Sakhan Teresa del Villar, who would take command of the 1st Bear Guards. They would face the 9th Alshane Regulars. They battled in a jungle, and the fighting would last for 10 days. The tenacity of the DCMS led to the Ghost Bears taking as many captives as possible, as they would become powerful bondsmen. Several companies of regulars were able to escape the world, but the Ghost Bears were satisfied with their conquest. However, troubles on Thule drew the attention of Alpha Galaxy. The remaining Rasselhog forces dealt damage to the small Ghost Bear garrison. Sakhan del Villar would lead her forces and destroy 2 companies of the 1st Hussars, then chase down the rest of them to a mine. The Ghost Bears endured traps and artillery while hunting down the remains of the Rasselhog Hussars. By the end of the fighting, the commander of the Hussars became a bondsman, and the world of Thule was fully secure. Then, the 3rd Bear Guards were on Trondheim. They would face the local garrison force of the Trondheim Freedom Defenders, a mixed brigade of 2 regiments of mechanized infantry, an aerospace wing, 2 heavy armor battalions, and a company of mechs. They would battle in difficult terrain, as a star of heavy mechs were lost in the lava flats as they fell through the hollow earth into the lava. This enraged the 3rd Bear Guards, and they hunted down and destroyed the local garrison with ferocity. In June 3050, they would attack Last Frontier. Sakhan del Villar would again lead. The Orsay and Silver Root Keshiks and the 1st Bear Guards would be the main forces of the attack. They battled the 1st Freeman, an untested unit. In a supply base raid, a lucky shot hit Sakhan del Villar's cockpit, severely injuring her. She would fall into a coma and never wake up. This would be a severe blow to Clan Ghost Bear. In September 3050, the 1st Bear Guards would confront the 1st and 2nd Jezershko Brigade on Jezershko. Only 1 trinary was sent in to deal with the armored brigade. The enemy units would retreat and use defensive positioning and traps to hold off the Ghost Bears. Aerofighters were called in to break the defenses, and the battle was won by Clan Ghost Bear. Meanwhile, the 3rd Bear Guards would attack Kasser, where they would face the 2nd Hussars. The Hussars used their light units to pull the 3rd into a trap. This led to close quarters combat. The 3rd would wipe out the Hussars as they took the world. The 139th Striker Cluster would attack Pomme de Terre. The world would surrender without a fight before a Bachal could even be declared. The 1st Bear Guards would arrive on Goito in October 3050. Their command Supernova would take the lead and fight the Hunting Revelers. This was a 2-battalion armor unit that would be wiped out very quickly. On October 31st, Ilkhan Leo Showers would die, and this would temporarily stop the clan war machine. The fighting would resume in 3051 as a new Ilkhan would deploy more forces to clear the way to Terra. In December 3051, the entirety of Alpha Galaxy would attack the world of Alshane. The galaxy would be divided up in order to deal with the threats of the Alshane Regulars and 2nd Sword of Light. The 1st Bear Guards would battle the 6th Alshane Regulars, while the 50th Striker and 3rd Bear Guards would face the Sword of Light. The Regulars' defenses held strong, and the 1st had to call in air support. The Sword of Light would ambush the 3rd Bear Guards in a canyon, but they would escape despite the damage. Many fights would turn into one-on-one duels, but the DCMS ended this practice due to the amount of Ghost Bear victories. The maneuvers of the DCMS forces would cause chaos, as in one battle, 2 Ghost Bear units ended up firing on each other by accident. The 1st Guards and 50th Striker would team up to hunt the Regulars. The 3rd would take heavy damage as they fell into another trap. The Regulars would finally get cornered, but were saved by the 2nd Sword of Light, who did a combat drop to save their allies. The DCMS would do a fighting withdrawal from the world. It was a hard-fought victory for the clan. Of note, in 3060, Alshane would become the capital of the Ghost Bear Dominion due to all the sacrifices it took to capture the world. The 1st Bear Guards would conquer Sternwerda in January 52. They would fight the 7th Allshane Regulars. The battle would become a chase, with limited fighting. When the 7th attempted to evacuate, part of their regiment would sacrifice themselves in order to allow their teammates to escape the world. After taking some time to recover, the 3rd Bear Guards would attack Ardaz in February 52. The details of this battle have been kept top secret, but what is known is that the HPG was destroyed during the fighting. It is likely they faced a team of comm guards or mercenaries working for Comstar, but that is just speculation. The Orsay Keshik would capture Utrecht without a fight in March, making the world a valuable asset for material gathering. At the same time, the 50th Striker Cluster would battle the 21st Benjamin Regulars on Setúbal. The 21st divided their forces into 2 teams, but the 50th just focused on one of the teams, causing a rout. The second team would end up firing on both ally and enemy, as the 50th chased their weak foes. It was not long before they captured the world. In April 3052, the 1st Bear Guards would battle on Rubigen against the 4th Allshane Regulars. The Regulars used realistic-looking hollow projections of mechs in order to confuse their foes. After the Ghost Bear Elementals broke the projectors, the battle would be won in very short order. A battalion of the 4th would escape, and the Bears would hold the world. May 3052 brought Operation Revival to a close with the Battle of Tukayid. Alpha, Beta, and Delta galaxies would fight the 1st and 4th armies of the Comguard. Alpha went for Spanik, while Beta and Delta went for Luke. Alpha would face the 308th Comguard Division, who did hit-and-run attacks. Alpha made it to the city with little trouble. However, they would come across the 103rd and 91st Divisions, who were ready to fight. Alpha called in backup, and Beta and Delta took down the 91st. The 103rd were dug in deep, and it required all 3 galaxies to break their defenses and rout the Comguard forces. The troops were then shifted, with Beta and Delta holding conquered territory, while Alpha moved in for Luke. The 4th Army would be dug in, and the battle would be hard, especially when the remains of the 1st Army hit Alpha's main supply depot. Alpha would have to go back to finish off the 1st Army, but they would be heavily damaged by the end of all this fighting. The Ghost Bears chose to hold their territory rather than risk total defeat. In the end, their campaign was declared a partial victory, an achievement most clans could not boast. After the battle, most of Alpha Galaxy would need to rebuild. However, the 1st Bear Guards would come back strong by capturing the world of Santander from Clan Smoke Jaguar in July 3052. More changes would come as the 139th Striker were sent to the clan homeworlds in 3055 in order to become the basis of Omega Galaxy. The post-war period saw Alpha divided up as a garrison force. They would protect Krennice, Polsenego, Trondheim, Utrecht, and Monadorf. Around the same time, a new cluster was designed to represent the cooperation between the conquered Rasselhog people and Clan Ghost Bear. By 3061, the 1st Rasselhog Bears would be stationed on Utrecht, training for combat with a mix of Truebirth clanners and freed Inner Sphere bondsmen. They would be led by Star Colonel Ragnar, who was once Ragnar Magnusson, the son of the first ruler of the Free Rasselhog Republic. An attack by a rogue DCMS unit called the Allshane Avengers would strike Allshane in 3062 and spark the beginning of the First Combine Dominion War. The 1st Bear Guards would attack Idlewind and fight the 9th Pesht Regulars. They would kill the commander of the 9th and demoralize the rest of the Regulars. By the time the 7th Sword of Light arrived to help, 90% of the Regulars were destroyed. The 7th would hold strong, and the world would remain under Combine rule. The 3rd Bear Guards would invade Garstedt, where they would face the 22nd Dairon Regulars. They would fight for 2 weeks, until the Regulars retreated. However, the world would remain under Combine rule after the truce. During the early stages of the war, the remains of the Free Rasselhog Republic would conduct raids into Ghost Bear territory. The 1st Rasselhog Bears would successfully protect the border. In 3063, Clan Hell's horses would attack the Ghost Bear Dominion after being talked into it by Clan Wolf. The 1st Rasselhog Bears would do raids into the Hell's Horses occupied zone in response to these attacks. there would be continued raids even after the end of the Combine Dominion War. The Rosselhog Bears and 50th Stryker would team up to liberate Gunsberg from Clan Wolf during this time. One of the most significant battles in this era would be on Rosselhog. The 50th Stryker and 1st Rosselhog Bears would team up with the 283rd Battle Cluster from the Rho Galaxy to battle the 2nd Wolf Lancers and elements of Clan Wolf's Omega Galaxy. They would drive off their enemies, and the locals were glad to be rescued. By the end of the era, the 50th and 1st Rosselhog would remain on Rosselhog, while the rest of the galaxy was on Alshane. In 3068, the leadership of Clan Ghost Bear would gather to discuss whether to join in and support the Free Rosselhog Republic's war on the Word of Blake. By 3070, the remains of the Free Rosselhog Republic were in negotiation with the Ghost Bear Dominion. This would lead to the creation of the Rosselhog Dominion. Also, at some point prior to 3070, the 1st Rosselhog Bears would become the core of the Rosselhog Galaxy, which was designed to better unite the people of Rosselhog with Clan Ghost Bear. Alpha Galaxy would be part of the clan's counterattack against the Word of Blake in 3074. They would battle across several worlds in the Draconis Combine. The fighting would be so intense that Alpha Galaxy would take replacements from other galaxies to keep their strength up in order to continue the fight as the Ghost Bear Vanguard. December 3074 saw Ghost Bear attack the Word of Blake on Luthien and Pesht. Alpha and Omega were sent to Luthien, and they didn't offer Zelbringen to any Blake forces, nor did they take any salvage. They devastated the Blake forces in a matter of days, and also destroyed any Combine units that got in their way. They would capture 2 warships, and in January 3075, the team moved on to find more target-rich worlds. The world of Caos Borealis was captured by the Word of Blake, and the counterattack came in August 3075. Alpha and Omega galaxies would work together, ignoring requests from the DCMS as they destroyed the Blake forces. In September, Devlin Stone would recruit Clan Ghost Bear into his anti-Blake coalition. In 3076, there would be a major warship battle near Diev. Blake forces would make their way past space defenses in order to battle the coalition forces on the world. The coalition forces would face the 28th and 32nd Militia Divisions, as well as the 3rd Bryant, 1st Lipton, 2nd New Earth, and 1st Zosma Protectorate militias. The Blake forces would be crushed by the combined might of Alpha and Omega galaxies. The 32nd Militia Division was wiped out, and the other 5 divisions fled. However, the 50th Stryker would take so much damage during the fighting that they would have to be disbanded, and their troops would be used to rebuild other clusters in Alpha Galaxy. In 3077, Alpha would join the other coalition forces on Dairon to wipe out the remains of the Blake troops on that world. It was a bloody and costly campaign for the Ghost Bears. By 3079, the 1st Bear Guards would be down to 30% effective, the 3rd Bear Guards would be down to 25% effective, the 50th Stryker would be disbanded, yet the overall stability of Alpha Galaxy would not be in question. Due to their losses, they would be in dire need of replacement equipment and new troops. While stationed on Alshane, the units of Alpha Galaxy would be able to rebuild rather quickly. This was facilitated by 2 new clusters, the 73rd Battle and 8th Bear Cuirassiers. They would be from Delta Galaxy, which was disbanded in order to rebuild the Alpha and Beta galaxies. As the years passed, Alpha Galaxy would be functioning as the defenders of Alshane and nearby worlds. They would also be given top-of-the-line equipment to ensure that the vanguard of the Rosselhog Dominion could stand up to any threat. The Novacat Rangers would raid the world of Hailstone in late 3096. The 3rd Bear Guards held them off, but after a long and brutal fight, the guards were down to 2 stars. The Novacat commander refused to give Hejera, and that dishonorable act would set the stage for the 2nd Combine Dominion War. It would take a little bit of time, but Alpha Galaxy's garrison work would end in 3098, as Alpha Galaxy would head out to get revenge on Clan Novacat. The 8th Bear Cuirassiers would be the first to attack Novacat territory in 3098. The 8th went to Yamarovka in order to hunt Novacat Khan Santin West. They moved in on the Novacat Enclave, but they would get hit in the back by the Cat's Eye Cluster and Neko Ryu Keshik. After 2 hours of fighting, they succeeded in their mission as the rest of the Nova Cat forces retreated. Then, they would face the Nova Cat Hussars on Mualang. The Hussars would flee after 2 days, but their losses were so great they would be disbanded. The 8th would remain as the garrison of Mualang and fight off an attack by the 17th Benjamin Regulars and Dragon Scales Cluster. In 3099, the 73rd Battle Cluster would fight Nova Cat on La Brea and earn a quick victory. They would team up with the 4th Bear Regulars to attack Kotapar to finish off the Nova Cat Rangers. The 4th would strike supply lines while the 73rd went after the genetic stores. Ghost Bear would take the world, but at a high cost. However, the Sibco and Krecha were evacuated, allowing Nova Cat to survive a little longer. Alpha Galaxy would reunite and would join the 243rd Battle Cluster in an invasion of the Nova Cat-held world of Asgard. They would fight the Neko Ryu Keshik, Nova Cat Fusiliers, and Cat's Eye Cluster. The Ghost Bear team arrived in June 3099 and moved in, causing damage to infrastructure and destroying any vehicles they came across. They discovered that the Nova Cat facilities were empty. The Ghost Bears would get ambushed in the city, leading into a week of street-to-street warfare. Any who retreated got targeted by arrow fighters, but the Ghost Bears were able to push back the Nova Cats. They would chase their fleeing foes and kill their Sakon, as well as wiping out the Neko Ryu and Cat's Eye cluster. They would push forward further into Nova Cat territory. However, the Nova Cat defenses were too heavy, and they had to pull back as a ceasefire was called in 3101. A DCMS attack on Mualang in 3110 would see the 8th Bear Cuirassiers defend their garrison. The commander of the artillery forces, Star Commander James, would be a key asset due to his destruction of 3 mechs with his kite and commanding the artillery to disrupt command formations. The Sword of Light-led forces would retreat due to this chaos and destruction. As the Republic of the Sphere began to fall apart, Alpha Galaxy would be involved in capturing Alrakis and Constance. They would hold these worlds until Omega Galaxy arrived in 3135. However, Omega Galaxy's involvement with the Vega Protectorate would make the Khan question their loyalty due to the growth in the Freeminder movement that was growing in that region. Despite some worries, the Vega Protectorate would be absorbed into the Rosselhog Dominion. Eyes were on that region, and Alpha was poised to take down Omega if things got out of hand. As of 3145, Alpha would be divided upon the worlds of Alshane, Tanaka, Mualang, and Sternverda. Tensions would continue to rise in the late Dark Age. In 3145, the 73rd Battle Cluster would send a trinary to Kanowit in 3145. They would face the First Sword of Light, and after a brief standoff, Star Captain Herschel Hall would challenge Shosa Seth Granderson to a duel. Granderson won and removed the arms and head of Herschel's gravedigger. The rest of the trinary honored the Bachal and left the world. In late 3151, the Dominion Civil War would erupt after the Rosselhog Dominion was denied entry into the Third Star League. Fighting would break out on several worlds as the joiners and deniers started arguing and oftentimes came to blows. Alpha Galaxy would get involved in the fighting, with part of the unit going with the Ursa Keshik, who supported the joiner faction, while some of the others would end up taking a neutral path, including their commander. The Silver Root Keshik would begin neutral as they focused on protecting VIPs rather than battle their own brothers. However, over time, they would grow to hate the Denier faction for their actions as the war progressed. On Alshane, Galaxy Commander Magnusson would be kidnapped by rebel members of Alpha Galaxy. He would be forced to declare martial law and a full return to the caste system. This would make the situation on Alshane worse, and this chaos would lead the naval forces into declaring neutrality rather than cause needless deaths. Parts of Alpha would meet up with the Rho Galaxy to warn them of the troubles coming from the Vega Protectorate and Omega Galaxy. The 73rd Battle Cluster would be sent out on probing raids against Omega Galaxy. There would be raids on La Balan, Alrakis, and Kessel. These raids would reveal that Omega and the Protectorate forces to be too well dug in for a direct fight. This would lead to a defensive war against the Deniers. The Watch would rescue Galaxy Commander Magnusson in December. He would be sent to Rasselhag to inform the council of the growing civil war. This would lead to chaos in the capital as the year came to an end. There would be more fighting, as blame was pointed everywhere. Months of civil unrest would lead to innocent people being imprisoned and plenty of death. In February 3152, Alpha and Rho galaxies went on the attack. A team of 5 clusters would fight Omega on Kessel with no Zelbringen. Omega would flee, and Alpha would garrison the world while searching for the remnants. April would be a big month, as Omega Galaxy reinforcements would arrive on Kessel. As Rho and Omega began fighting, they would be interrupted, and their commanders would be brought in to a meeting. Galaxy Commander Magnusson and Sakhan Roy Jorgensen would arrive to negotiate. The commander of Rho would pledge himself to peace, and the commander of Omega would stand down. Star Colonel Hall of Alpha would shoot Sakhan Jorgensen because he viewed the Sakhan as a traitor. Then the acting Alpha commander was killed for his actions by Magnusson. After that, Alpha Galaxy would return to their post on Olshane. Upon their arrival, Alpha worked with the Watch to hunt down the Joiner rebels. In a week-long battle, the second tier and Orsay Keshik surrendered. By the end of the fighting, the Orsay Keshik had lost all their mechs, but most of their mech warriors had survived. Magnusson tried to make peace between the Joiners and the Deniers on Olshane. Meanwhile, members of the Unity Council were having trials of refusal instead of striving for unity. Despite that, things started to calm down in early May due to military forces calming down on both sides. Galaxy Commander Lars Magnusson would meet the leadership of the Rasselhag Dominion as the war came to an end. He would admit failure for letting Alpha Galaxy get out of control. He would get challenged to a trial of grievance as a means of scapegoating him for the Civil War. He would die to a stab wound, and the Council would make an odd decision. To avoid more arguments, the Rasselhag Dominion would go to war with someone else. The troops were mobilized to invade the Draconis Combine once again in June 3152. The general idea was to unite the Joiners and Deniers against a common enemy. Alpha Galaxy would take time to rebuild. Mechs and mech warriors were easy to come across, but elemental soldiers were much more difficult to replace. This is where the history of Alpha Galaxy stops. Their future has yet to be written, but it will likely involve fighting against the Combine and the other enemies of the Ghost Bear Dominion. Alpha Galaxy is the vanguard of their clan. They have many wins to their name and are respected by their peers and enemies alike. They played a big part in ending the Ghost Bear Civil War and will likely play a key part in future Ghost Bear wars. Without Alpha Galaxy, Clan Ghost Bear would not have gotten as far as they have. There are many Rystars and elite warriors in Alpha Galaxy. Here are a few of the most notable. Alethea Kabrinsky. She took over as Sakhan after Teresa Del Villar fell into a coma. She would eventually become Khan and would command the Ghost Bear forces in the fight against the Ward of Blake, as well as convincing Clan Snowraven to join the fight. She piloted a Firemoth, Dasher. Hunter Sang. Commander of the 3rd Bear Guards during Operation Revival. He would use brutal tactics to subdue his enemies. After the war, he would be transferred to the 139th Striker Cluster, which would become the basis for Omega Galaxy. He was known for not taking Inner Sphere bondsmen. Ian Del Villar, a star captain in the Ursa Keshik, who fought during Operation Revival. He would win the world of Porthos in a duel with a retired soldier. He would help the defeated soldier become the liaison of Porthos. He piloted a Nova Blackhawk, Joni Swigard. She was the commander of the 1st Hussars. She would doggedly hold Thule, and upon being defeated by Sakhan Del Villar, she would become a bondsman and eventually rise to the rank of Star Captain in the 50th Striker. She piloted a Hunchback. Sarah Del Villar, an elemental commander in the 3rd Bear Guards by 3052. She would take over for Hunter Seng as the 3rd's commander. She would also take Ragnar Magnusson of Clan Wolf in Exile as a bondsman. She would reduce the hyper-violence of the 3rd and would remain in command into the Dark Age. She piloted an executioner, Gladiator. Piers Sang. He was one of the last holders of the Sang blood name after the Word of Blake attack on Ghost Bear Gene Stores. He would capture a Word of Blake dropship during the Battle of Luthien. He lost the lower half of his left arm while fighting and killing Mane Domini of the Word of Blake. Instead of getting a replacement, his suit was modified to allow him to fight without it. He would be promoted and command the 1st Bear Guards by 3085. He used medium battle armor. Ragnar Magnusson, the son of the first ruler of the Free Rosselhog Republic. He would be made a bondsman by Clan Wolf, then be taken by Clan Ghostbear in 3060. Not long after, he would become the commander of the first Rosselhog Bears, and later the commander of the Rosselhog Galaxy. He would become Sakon and have Magnusson become a blood name in 3075. He became the first ruler of the Rosselhog Dominion in 3103. He is known for piloting an Ice Ferret, Fenris, and a Direwolf, Daishi. Eileen. She would fight against Clan Wolf in Rosselhog. She would win a trial of possession for a Sun Cobra. Piloting a new Clan Wolf mech ruffled some feathers. She would win 2 trials of grievance to prove her choice of mech was the correct one. She piloted a Direwolf, Daishi, and later a Sun Cobra. Lars Magnusson. First generation legacy of Ragnar Magnusson. He would earn his blood name in 3134 and earned the honor of going with the Khan to the funeral of Victor Steiner Davian. He would become a galaxy commander and lead Alpha by 3145. He would be blamed for not controlling Alpha Galaxy during the Civil War and would die in a trial of grievance in 3152. He piloted an Ursus nicknamed Ul. Maya Del Valar, the commander of the 8th Bear Cuirassiers during the Dark Age. She led her troops on missions to kill the Novacat Khan. Her troops succeeded in the mission and would have several more victories in the Second Combine Dominion War. Franklin Vong, the commander of the 73rd Battle Cluster in the early Dark Age. He would lead his team against Clan Novacat with several victories. This included wiping out the Novacat Rangers, but fighting in the Second Combine Dominion War nearly destroyed his cluster. James Devon, the commander of the 8th Bear Cuirassier Artillery in the Dark Age. His skill led to a victory on Mualang in 3110, which gave him the opportunity to earn a blood name. He would become a galaxy commander in 3120 and command Kappa Galaxy. He piloted a kite reconnaissance vehicle. Obviously, Clan Ghost Bear uses clan mechs, with a few exceptions, such as the Rosselhog Bears, who used some Innersphere mechs. Yes, that would fade over time, especially when the Rosselhog Galaxy was formed. Their lineup will have some Wolf, Novacat, and Hell's Horses Omnimechs due to various border fights. Alpha is unique as it has the Gorsei and Silverroot Keshiks, as they are controlled by the Khan and Sakon respectively. The rest of the unit is made up of the 1st Bear Guards, nicknamed the Rage, the 2nd Bear Guards, nicknamed the Ilkhan's Shield, the 50th Striker were known as the Black Bears, 139th Striker had no nickname, 73rd Striker are the Lash, 8th Bear Cuirassiers are called the Blinding Drive, and the 1st Rosselhog Bears did not get a nickname before leaving the galaxy. The Orsay Keshik was a supernova made up of 2 command stars, a fighter star, and a battle nova. The Silverroot Keshik would have 2 command novas, a fighter star, and an artillery star. The 1st Bear Guards have a command supernova, 2 assault trinaries, an elemental binary, and a fighter binary. The 3rd Bear Guards have a command trinary, an assault trinary, a battle trinary, an elemental binary, and a fighter binary. The 139th has 3 trinaries. The 50th had a command trinary, 2 striker trinaries, a supernova striker trinary, and an aero fighter trinary. The 1st Rosselhog Bears had 3 trinaries during their time with Alpha. The 8th Bear Cuirassiers have a command trinary, an assault trinary, striker trinary, elemental trinary, and a fighter binary. Finally, the 73rd Battle would have a command trinary, a battle trinary, a striker trinary, and a supernova, plus a fighter binary. The Orsay Keshik would be made up of warriors from the same Sibco and would be synchronized in terms of teamwork. The Silverroot Keshik would only accept elite warriors who completed the clawing and would be known for their aggressive tactics. The 1st Bear Guards use a mix of airstrikes and ground troops to break enemy defenses. The 3rd Bear Guards would be known for ruthless brutality in their attacks. The 139th forego clan rules and rely on Intersphere tactics to win, which led them into becoming the basis of Omega Galaxy. The 50th Striker were skilled at spotting traps and ambushes, then turning them on their enemy. The 1st Rosselhug Bears used standard clan tactics. The 8th Cuirassiers and 73rd Battle rely on airstrikes to soften their enemies before finishing them off with close-range combat. Alpha Galaxy would always have transport and would be given the best gear. On occasion, they would even have warships as support. They were the first to get rebuilt after major battles and would often be the vanguard of any Bear campaign, a powerful unit with a very well-earned reputation. There is a little bit of fiction that ties into the Clan Ghost Bear Alpha Galaxy, a novel that has some references to members of Alpha Galaxy, as well as a short story that focuses on Sarah Del Villar of the 3rd Bear Guards. Beyond that, there are plenty of sourcebooks with history and unit information. This includes multiple TRO entries and some campaign books. Before I get into my usual spiel about the unit, I want to make something very clear. I didn't know the Silverroot Keshik was the focus of MechWarrior 5 Clan's Ghost Bear Flash Storm. So if anyone thinks I'm shilling for the game, I'm not. It was a surprise when I started my research, and as far as I'm concerned, it's not canonical. Also, I do not own, nor have I ever played, MW5 Clans, because I heard it was not a very good game. I chose Alpha Galaxy because I knew I had to do my first clan video with an important galaxy. Add to that, this is my 50th video, and I knew I had to make this video count. I went with Ghost Bear because they're my favorite clan. For those who care, my top 3 includes Steel Viper and Novacat. I enjoyed doing the research, but the sheer amount of reading got overwhelming on occasion, as I did not expect there to be so much information on this unit. Still, it is nice to cover a galaxy that has abundant information, as many of them only have information pertaining to Operation Revival. I can only hope that future galaxies I cover are just as interesting as Ghost Bear's Alpha Galaxy. I do recommend painting up a set of Alpha Galaxy. They do have a difficult paint scheme, but if you can make it work, you will have some cool looking mechs on the tabletop. They are involved in enough fighting for historical battles, and they are powerful enough for some great what-if matches. If you have painted up a set, let me know in the comments. Next time, I will be looking at a galaxy from my second favorite clan, the Gamma Galaxy of Clan Steel Viper. The video won't be as long as this one, but there's plenty of history to discuss. I want to give a big thank you to all my viewers. I would not have made it to 50 videos if it wasn't for you guys. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for watching BattleTech Faction Briefings. May your weapons stay hot, and your reactors stay cool. Please check out the other videos on the playlist if you have the chance. There are 50 of them, so that's plenty of content to check out. And until next time, I'll see you at the tavern. Selah!